for the there you go.
Okay. There you go. Okay, cool. Do you guys see my screen now with the slides?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get started. Let me also open my speaker notes. Do you guys also see my speaker notes?
Negative.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Kubernetes new contributor orientation. Welcome everyone. I'm pretty sure this is your first experience to Kubernetes world. Just making sure, making sure that everything looks good. Should I continue?
Yes.
Slides. Okay. All right. Okay. Welcome to Kubernetes new contributor orientation. This is your first ever Kubernetes contribution in some sense. Let's get started. Little housekeeping before we start off. We have a few housekeeping items. Firstly, this meeting is recorded and will be published on YouTube. All meetings in Kubernetes community abide by a code of conduct, which you can find at the link on the bottom of the slide. It basically sums up to please be respectful of speakers and your fellow attendees, and generally be excellent to each other. Please use the chat to ask questions and have discussions throughout this call. There will be a Q&A session at the end where we encourage you to ask questions verbally if you would like to. A copy of these slides is available on GitHub, and the link is also in the meeting invite. We will post the link in the chat now. Now that on the GitHub, the slides are provided as a PDF file, the links in the desk are not clickable as displayed on GitHub, but they should be clickable if you download the file. All right. Today's agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to orient you to the Kubernetes community. That means giving you a sense for how the community works and what your part is or could be within it. We will start off with a presentation to convey information about the community. Then we will have Q&A session where you're welcome to answer any question you would like of your host today. Hearing the questions that you ask can benefit anyone watching the recording, so please do ask questions verbally during this time, if you're comfortable doing so. So today's host, I am Darshan. Somehow my image is not shown there. That's not me, that's actually Mario. A little bit about myself. I am Darshan Murthy, and I have been contributing to SIG storage and SIG networking for about 6 months now. Let's dive in. Kubernetes community is a very big group of people who work together to create and maintain the Kubernetes project. To give some stats about how many contributors we have, here are some numbers to give you a sense for just how big the Kubernetes community is. We track data about our contributions via GitHub and a few other contributor tools, and we collect them in a tool called DevStats. This is basically a big database of information about Kubernetes contribution, and you're welcome to explore it yourself. These stats were pulled in March of 2024. At the time, we had over 86,000 contributors who had made over 6 million contributions. And all these contributions are reviewed by just 6.5 thousand people with reviewer privileges. We will talk more about what a contribution might mean and who a reviewer might be a little later in the presentation. Here is another visualization how large our community is and how fast it's grown. This graph from the 2024 Kubernetes project journey report shows how we have grown from Kubernetes beginnings in 2014 to today. We grew from zero to over 80,000 contributors in our first 10 years. Now, before we dive deeper into community, some of you may be unfamiliar with with what Kubernetes is and what it does. Kubernetes is an open source container orchestration tool. Open source means that it's made by people around the world, some of whom are paid to work on it, but many of whom are volunteers. And the code of the Kubernetes software is publicly available under an open source license that describes exactly who, when, and how the software and its source code can be used. And the cool thing that Kubernetes does is the orchestrate containers. Let's go over what that means. Businesses have many applications they need to run. For example, they may have a payroll application, logistic applications, or a company website. These applications needs to run somewhere. So businesses also have a lot of computers to run these applications on. Kubernetes enables businesses to say, hey, Kubernetes, here are the computers I have, and here is the app I need to run. You can describe various levels of details, how that application needs to run, or the hardware it might need, and Kubernetes will run it on machine for you. It also provides some handy functionalities for managing these applications while it's running. For example, it can provide some help for the process of updating application to a new version. Exactly how it does all of this magic is what Kubernetes contributors work to maintain and improve every day. Let's learn more about how contributors build Kubernetes by exploring our community structure. Kubernetes is an open source project within Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The CNCF is a nonprofit organization with the stated mission to make cloud native ubiquitous. To that end, they support many open source projects that enable companies to run applications in the cloud. The CNCF provides a variety of guidance and support to its projects, including legal support, code of conduct, and help with logos, copyright, and more. The pyramid below the CNCF represents the structure of the Kubernetes community. At the top, interfacing the most with the CNCF and presiding over the various topics that affects the entire community and project is the steering committee. This is a body of 7 members who are elected by Kubernetes org members. We will go over more about what org membership means shortly. With the project so large, there are many different concepts within the project that need unique skill and knowledge. For example, the way Kubernetes nodes where the workloads are run do what they do is one area of expertise. Meanwhile, the challenge of writing and maintaining the Kubernetes docs needs folks with different expertise. People who work on specific areas of the project gather together in what are called special interest groups or SIGs. This break up the work of building and maintaining Kubernetes project into more sensible chunks. Sometimes, however, there are big areas that need attention that are both very significant and cut across SIGs. Sometimes these are also split into what we call working groups. A working group is generally temporary, created to address a specific issue, and then meant to disappear as a focus group once the topic is sufficiently addressed by ongoing SIG work. A defining characteristic of WGs is that they generally don't own any code or feature, at least not in the long term. WG work either is or will be owned by one or more SIGs by the time the WG dissolves, unless that is WG become a SIG, which does happen occasionally. But even the work of one SIG can be quite broad in scope. there can be hundreds of contributors to a single SIG. So SIG further break down their work into sub-projects. Currently, there are 24 special interest groups, 7 working groups, and 3 committees in the Kubernetes community. We can further group the SIG and working groups by their scope. Right? Some groups operate at the project level, and all other work in the project depend on them. Some groups work at the horizontal level, meaning that they have technical focus that is both deep and broad, and own core functionalities from a project architecture perspective. Vertical groups are deep, specific technical focus that depends on the work of the horizontal groups. And of course, both horizontal and vertical groups depend on the work of the project groups. Here is a diagram of all of the SIGs and working groups currently active in the Kubernetes project. To call out just a few, SIG releases and docs are groups whose work you might be familiar with, and they operate at a project scope. Though you may not have known it, you have probably encountered the work of SIG API machinery, SIG auth before. We consider these to be horizontal groups. And in the vertical groups, you can also find lots of familiar concepts like auto-scaling, scheduling, networking, and node. You might want to refer back to this diagram later as you are exploring groups to contribute to. Feel free to ask questions about these during Q&A or in the chat now. But for now, we are going to move along to talk more about contribution. Now you've learned the basics of how the community is structured. Let's start exploring where you fit into all this. First off, let's briefly explore why you might want to contribute. This is a good question. There are so many reasons people contribute to Kubernetes community. For some, their job requires contributing, right? There are also contributors who work with community on a purely volunteer basis. There are also those who are somewhere in middle where their work needs them to contribute sometimes, but they also do extra work for community outside of their job. So why do so many people contribute without getting paid? They may want to grow specific skills for their resume, or maybe they want to meet people working in the industry. Maybe they just think the technology is cool and they want to dive deep and help build it. Or sometimes folks just like being part of a community of people all working towards similar goals. You should think carefully about why you want to contribute. As you get more engaged with the community, you will get more out of it if you can already tell people what you want. If others know who you are, what you do, and what you can do, they can more easily help you find work, opportunities, and connections that will most benefit you. Regardless of why you're interested in contributing, you're probably wondering what it means to be a contributor. To answer question of what it means to be a contributor, let's first explore what might count as contribution, right? The truth is that any work you do to support Kubernetes project is a welcome and valued contribution to the community. That sounds broad and vague, but it's important. There's a lot of work contributors do behind the scenes to make the project run. And it's certainly not all writing code and making pull requests on GitHub, right? It's just not writing code always. That said, it can certainly help to have some examples. Here are few you might have thought of, some you might have not. For example, did you start off by posting a hello message in Kubernetes new contributor channel in Kubernetes Slack? That's a contribution. Have you commented on an issue or a proposal for a new feature to share your thoughts or opinion? That's a contribution. Even watching or attending this meeting right now is a contribution. So pat yourself on the back for contributing today. As a community, we try our best to acknowledge and appreciate contribution to the community in many forms. But if so many vague and varied things can count as a contribution, then what does it mean to be a contributor? There are varying level of contributor. You might remember our slide earlier where we mentioned contributors and reviewers. The slides dive into more details on what those terms means. Starting at the bottom, anyone can be a contributor. If you do any of the things mentioned on the previous slide and more, you're already a contributor. If you contribute to the community in any way, then you might be what we call non-member contributor. This means that you pop into the community and contribute, likely in small, disconnected ways. But if you want to really get involved with the community, you might want to go to org membership. Now, what is an org membership? An org member refers to a member of the Kubernetes organization on GitHub. Being an org member gives you higher privileges to interact with the tools contributors use to do their work, like our Prowbot in GitHub, which helps us to apply label, configure issues using GitHub commands. Having org membership is a sign that you're an active, engaged contributor who intend to contribute in more structured ways within the community. You're not just picking up a single issue or asking one-off questions. You're probably developing expertise in certain areas of the project. You might be contributing in one or more sub-projects or six in consistent, measurable ways. So you will be ready to become a Kubernetes org member when the contributors you work with regularly are familiar with your work and will vouch for you as a sponsors on your request for membership. Beyond becoming an org member, there are increasing levels of trust, ownership, responsibility that you could choose to pursue. Once you have engaged in the area for a while, you might have enough knowledge to help review contributions or pull requests from other contributors. Eventually, you might be trusted enough to have the final say on whether some code is merged or contribution is accepted and displayed on something like the kubernetes.io website. Then you would be an approver. If you become a strong expert in a specific area who is highly trusted and regarded for your expertise, you might take on new responsibilities. You might become the person others come to with questions, and you might lead triage sessions or other work for the area. At that point, you might be a sub-project owner. If you're an expert who starts leading things in that area, you might also take on responsibility for various resources within that area and how they relate to other parts of the project. For example, you might take responsibility for the README file defining a whole sub-project group, which is where people would go to learn about it. And you might become the contact person who triages requests from other parts of the project. At that point, you might be a sub-project leader. If you're leading a whole sub-project, that's a considerable chunk of work within the SIG. You're probably interacting and collaborating with the leads of other sub-projects, and you're probably developing a pretty strong sense of the mission, objective, ongoing work of SIG as a whole. At that point, you may become a chair or a tech lead for an entire special interest group. If you remember our community structure diagram from earlier, you might wonder, if becoming a member of the steering committee would be the next step. But steering is an elected position. You can actually run for steering at any point past org membership, but you will be more likely to get elected the better other contributors know you and your work. The ladder might seem like one true path to contribution, but I want to remind you that there is no single path for your contributor journey. Most contributors end up contributing in multiple areas of the project. Some people even develop ownership in different SIGs at the same time. Just because you are learning and contributing in one SIG doesn't mean you can't check out others. Remember, most contributors are at least partially volunteers. Almost everyone contributing in doing it because they love it. So look around, find what you love, and do that. For example, in my case, I'm part of two SIGs. One is for the networking, another was for the storage. So I tend to contribute in the both, and I also attend the scrums and meeting for both the SIGs because they are sometimes related, and I get to see the issues and the discussions that are happening in both the SIGs. Now you know the basics of how community is structured and how you might fit into it. As we have established, you might already be a non-member contributor. But if you want to do more to contribute, let's explore where you can start. The fastest way to learn and make yourself useful will be to find a SIG that suits your interest and just start getting involved there. That might not mean immediately picking up an issue and writing code. This is a very good one. Before I started my contribution, for example, storage or networking, I was just attending their scrums. When you go to the scrum, you learn a lot. What are the ongoing issues and what part of the issues they all care about, and you can pick up useful information along the way. Often getting involved means attending meetings, reading notes and existing issues, and just generally starting to get a feel for what the group does. Fastest way to learn, make yourself useful to find the SIG that suits your interest and just getting involved in. This might not mean immediately picking up an issue or writing the code, which means that just attending the meeting. Let's explore how you can learn about SIG so you can find groups that are doing work relevant to your interest. So, where can you start learning? First, check out SIG's community repo on GitHub. Check out the Kubernetes community repo on GitHub, Kubernetes/community. This repo, you can find folders containing information about each SIG and working group. Right, as you can see the list of all SIGs that are listed there. When you click on a SIGs folder in the community repo, it will show you that folder's README. At the top of the file, you will find brief summary of that SIGs focus area and likely a link to their more detailed team charter. This will give you a broad, high-level idea of what the SIG does. Below the summary of the group, you will find information about when the group meets. Attending meeting is often a great way to learn about is in the group, what they are currently working on, and how they do their work. Attending meetings is a great way to start getting to know the group of people you're interested in working with and for them to get to know you. You will also find information about the SIG's leadership. Most SIGs have both a concept of chair and technical lead. These leaders are at the same level of trust and responsibility, but likely own different types of tasks of supporting the SIG. Chair tend to do more project management type work for the SIG, while tech leads tend to do more architectural leadership like managing repos and certain kinds of technical decisions and process. Each SIG defines what these roles mean to them, and each leader will become Yeah, and each leader will be a little different. You'll also find contact information for the SIG. Most SIGs in Kubernetes do a lot of asynchronous communication in their channel within the Kubernetes Slack, where you can join by visiting slack.k8s.io. Each SIG also has a mailing list. Important announcement for all contributors to a SIG will go out to the mailing list. The mailing list will also be invited to all SIG meetings via Google Calendar. You will also find information about where to find issues and PR related to that SIG and other information like the GitHub team that are part of that SIG. Also, every contributor should join Kubernetes Dev Google group, also known as KDev. This mailing list is the primary communication channel for important contributor information. Check out each SIG folder will show you checking out each SIG folder will show you lots of information about the specific SIG. But what if you want to find information about all the SIGs meeting? The community maintains a contributor website at k8s.dev. Within k8s.dev, we have a page that with information about all the public community meetings. Go to k8s.dev calendar to see a list of all meetings. Clicking on one will bring up a new window for you to add the meeting to your own calendar. This can be a great way to set a sense of for which the groups meet at times that may work for you. Now you know how community is structured, where you could fit in, and how to start learning more. You might also want to know if there is any actively open work you could pick up and become a part of. We reach out to the SIG leads each month to ask them to share their current opportunities they would like you prospective contributors to know about. On this slide, you can see evergreen opportunities. These are opportunities to work that are basically opportunities for work that are basically always available or which are available on a regular cadence. So here is a list of all opportunities we have, right? There are some more here. Now, evergreen opportunities are great because they represent work that always needs doing and which is likely well defined. But a lot of work is one of style, an issue that needs fixing or work on new feature. Many of these types of tasks require certain skills to complete. You might see an open request that requires skill you want to develop, think you should pick up the task to learn. Be wary of doing this. If the task was easy for somebody already in the SIG to do it, it probably wouldn't be the open request, right? Many requests with the skill requirements are open because no one in the community currently has those skills, or they can't teach them, or they may be open because the people who do have those skills are too busy and can't pick up more work, uh, including helping others. But if you're coming to Kubernetes community with existing skill like certain programming languages or certain technical skills like Linux, networking, or expertise in a certain cloud provider, cloud provider, these tasks could be a great opportunity for you to learn and contribute to the community. This slide's lists call for help that require certain skills. If you're familiar with the tools or skills listed, please reach out in the appropriate Slack channel. These some of the opportunities are listed in the slides as well, and some more. here. One such standout for me is that SIG network, which I'm part of, where we generally have help needed to get started. Programmers, they have that tag so that new contributors can pick up something, the low hanging fruit, to just get started, get the hang of code base and how the concepts and architecture is laid out. So that's a good opportunity. I'll talk about more as well. This is very important slide where common pitfalls that a newbie contributors, what all they face it. The common pitfall is falling into the good first issue trap. The scenarios go something like this. You're a new prospective contributor and you're excited to make mark in the community. You will find an issue with issue, good first issue, label on GitHub. You think, great, I'll claim that issue, write some code, and I will have contributed to Kubernetes. That's what you think. But let's back up a step. Once you pick up the good first issue, how are you going to complete it? Right? I mentioned earlier that Kubernetes community uses the tool like Browbot to help us manage issues. Are you familiar with a bot? It's fine if you're not. Maybe you will just start writing code. Those reviewer, approvers, and owners we mentioned will appear to make sure that issue has the right label and stuff on it. Once you have written your code, you will also need to get their attention to review your PR. Remember, there's a lot more contributors than there are few reviewers. When you make your PR, reviewers and approvers will automatically assign. But if there are issue in your code, you might need to go back and forth with the reviewers on GitHub. Are you comfortable using comments and pull requests to see the work through the completion? This is a good question. Are you comfortable being engaged with a conversation with approvers? It is almost always back and forth. So are you comfortable with that? Most good first issues that get picked up by new non-member contributors never make it to the completion. The code never gets checked in. And then the community has all these tail issues and PR sitting around for work we really needed done. But the person got lost and ended up abandoning their contribution halfway. Then those reviewers and approvers and owners have to go through the process of triaging the issue and opening again, or whatever else that might need to do with it. You can avoid getting stuck in the trap by joining SIG and sticking with it. When you know the people you are working with and the goals you are working toward, you can be a valuable part of not just doing the work, but making sure work gets done. There was a lot of information today. This is just a orientation meeting. When you join your first SIG meeting, you are probably going to be overwhelmed. A lot of SIG meetings exist for active existing contributors to collaborate with each other on an active in progress work. That doesn't mean you shouldn't join as a new contributor. You will learn faster by joining these meetings and watching the processes in action. But it might mean that you feel left out and lost your first few times. Don't be afraid to ask questions by speaking up, asking in chat, asking in the SIG or subgroup Slack later. One final thought. The Kubernetes community is a big, diverse place. It's diverse in terms of people, skills, technologies, and so much more. It might take you a while to find the place that clicks with you. There might be a particular SIG or sub-project where you find more opportunities to build skills or connections that are most important to you. Don't forget that you can move around and explore other groups within the project. Most contributors end up contributing in multiple areas, and many find a particular area that they dive deep on. Number two contributors have more, no two contributors have the same journey. So you will need to explore to find the best places for you. Regardless of which area you explore, you need your help. We need your help, and we are glad you're here. We covered a lot today. Getting started with the Kubernetes community means learning a lot of basic tools, processes, structure, and more. Click out the links and refer to them often as you grow, as often as you grow. One thing that I wanted to share was in current call for help in the evergreen opportunities. HCD team now onboarding new contributors for their program where they are opening up for all new contributors to come in and help them. It is a mentorship program, so feel free to explore that as well. And if you have more questions, let's get started. QA. Any questions? Anyone? Suggestions? All right. Looks like no questions, but nice talking to y'all, and I hope you guys come back and contribute more to Kubernetes. Thank you.